All right, welcome back, Aspired Leaders. I'm so excited for my guest today, as he is someone that has been endorsing the new book, The Language of Behavior, with myself and Charlie Peck. And I am just so honored to have his voice, not only in the book, but also his support with just getting the word out about the language of behavior and that resource. So I'm super excited to have Dr. Chris Culver with me. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining me on Aspire to Lead.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and what a true honor to be here to share about the resource you and Charlie have created. I think it's just as magical for educators as they face a lot of challenges in the trenches today. So thanks for your devoted service to education. Thanks for your leadership, and thanks for your vision. I appreciate you.
Oh my goodness, I could say the exact same thing to you. So let's dive in, because I've been scouring through social media because me and you have just been connected through Charlie, and I've seen just some phenomenal work that you've been constructing. And one of them, I found a video of you speaking, and you're talking about the power of yet. And I just found just an engagement there as far as your story. I connected personally because I also struggled as a student. I also spent a very long time trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do as an adult. Maybe you could even say that still happens today. When I grow up, I'll be this. But for you, can you just share a little bit about your educational journey? I love about your students, and how you kind of got into education, but then also on the back end, you've done so many different things in education in regards to leadership and then consulting. I would just, love to hear that story and share that with my listeners.
Sure, I appreciate you asking. So I come from a divorced family, like a lot of students today. My mom and my dad separated when I was 6. My dad stayed in Fayetteville, North Carolina. My mom moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so during the week, I was raised in Tulsa. And on the weekends, I was raised on a 300-acre farm in Wyandotte, Oklahoma. And so as humans, we're naturally wired to want to belong. We want to fit in. We want to know that we matter. We want to know that we belong to respective spaces, and we're seen, heard, valued for who we are. I didn't realize the transient childhood would play an impact on me as it did until I was an adult going through child psychology, child human development. And as I look back and I think about ACE scores, right? I think about adverse child experiences, an assessment of 1 to 10 questions that identify, have you had a traumatic childhood? I have a score of a 9 out of 10. And I don't hold that against my parents in the sense of they did the best they could with what they had. They loved me as hard as they could, the way they could, and what they should. And again, I didn't realize the impact until I was an adult. So I am a proud product at every level of Oklahoma education, from pre-K. Let me back up. 1st grade through 12th grade. Pre-K and K were in North Carolina, but 1st through 12th and all my collegiate degrees are all from Oklahoma. But I was picked on and bullied in school. I was called names. I was put down, all of those things you can imagine. And unfortunately, that didn't happen just at school. It happened at home as well. And my stepdad would say things as, you won't amount to anything. You're a failure. You're a screw up, right? And so when you begin to internalize that at a young age and you begin to process that and you believe that to be true, you make some really rash decisions. And so it was educators who saved my life. I almost took my own life as a high school student just because of the severe, negative talk, negative self-doubt and belief. And so I vulnerably share that today because I know so many students struggle with cyberbullying. It may not look the same as when I was bullied in school, but it still matters. And so it was teachers who helped me get across the finish line. It was teachers that poured hope and belief into me. And I have known since I was 10 that I wanted to be a school teacher, right? I had my 10th birthday party in Office Depot. I have pictures of me reading the dictionary and the nameplate. My dad jokes that when other people were getting toys and Nerf guns and water guns, I was getting pointers and globes. Like, I just knew that I was going to be a teacher. My mom and my stepdad discouraged me from being a teacher when I graduated high school. They said, you will make no money, you'll be poor, you'll be broke, all the things that we've heard before. And I started my undergraduate degree as a business major, and I dropped out 3 times. I could not get statistics. I couldn't get accounting. It just did not make sense to me. And so when I started the 4th go as an English education major, I finally found my sweet spot of like, I can do this, right? I'm not saying there weren't challenges. I'm not saying there weren't hardships along the way, but that really helped me foster perseverance, tenacity, grit, all of those resiliency pieces that are so necessary. I share that because when I got my doctorate in 2023, I graduated with my EDD. When my dissertation chair asked me, are you going to do a qualitative study or a quantitative study? I wanted to prove to myself that I could do statistics. And so I did a quantitative study and successfully defended that. So that's my story of the power of yet. Maybe I couldn't have done it when I was 18 and 19. at the collegiate level coming out of high school because of self-doubt and fear and imposter syndrome and all the other pieces that go there. But as an adult, I found resources and took actionable steps every day to prove to myself that I can do that thing. And so I graduated with an undergrad in English ed, and then I would go on to get a master's. And so I have had an incredible career. I've had incredible blessings along the way. I served as a high school English teacher, working with predominantly schools that need a turnaround or school improvement. So students who are not on track to graduate, I often supported their educational journey. And then I stepped into leadership. I said I would never do middle school, and friend, never say never, because that's exactly where I landed. I was a middle school administrator for several years. The hardest job, but the most rewarding. And then most recently, I served in a superintendent's cabinet level executive team here in the OKC metro area, working on district improvement. And so I did that until June 30th of this last year. July 1, I stepped away and started my own consulting business, spreading love, joy, hope, and kindness wherever I go, but also educating around today's youth and making sure that we're fostering cultures of belonging to ensure that everyone feels seen, heard, valued, and respected. And then in addition, I'm super honored and blessed and humbled and everything to serve at Oklahoma City University, working with new teachers going into the field of education, but also new principals who are stepping into leadership roles in their respective districts or across the state. So it's been a true honor to get to travel and to connect and to use my own story of troubles and resiliency, if you will, and how I've navigated life's journeys to show me that it's teaching me something, that each experience and each opportunity has taught me something along the way, to drop the victim mindset and know that life is happening for me, should I choose to see it that way. And in all vulnerability, it took me a long time to get there, but now I'm grateful that I am. And when that precipice shifted, it started to open my eyes and my mind to different things, and I'm really grateful.
Well, we're grateful for you, and that's a beautiful story. I know there's a lot of struggle and hardship in that story, in that journey, but obviously on the other end of it, I mean, we are now blessed by you and the work that you're doing. So I just appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that. I also think you have great passions due to the experiences that you had. You had talked about, love and kindness. And I know this is something that you speak very highly on and often. And I would love for you just to share kind of what you're doing in regards to kindness as far as the message, and what are you saying to school districts, to teachers, to administrators in regards to this topic?
Absolutely. So I started my journey with kindness, of course, as a student when I was in high school, being picked on, being bullied. I didn't realize that even despite some of those challenges, that people still viewed me as positive. It wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 months ago, a former high school classmate reached out and said, "Man, you've always been positive, even in high school." And I think back and I was like, wow, I did not see that version of myself. So I appreciate that. I think about my journey in college, and I share this story vulnerably as well, that when my grandmother passed away, I was headed to class, and the professor made a statement along the lines of, "Are you not going to stay for class even though your paper is due tonight?" And I shared that my grandmother had just died. And she said, "Okay, we'll be an absence for you." And as I walked away from that space, I made a promise to myself that I would never treat people the way that I had been treated. Gosh, it makes me emotional today talking about it all these years later. And life has lifed along the way for a lot of students that I've worked with and served at various capacities, even the last semester at the university level. And I think we have to be mindful to have grace and compassion for ourselves and for other individuals. But at the core, it's the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated. And so there's real science around kindness, right? When you are kind to somebody else, they're 75% more likely to be kind to other people. It fosters belonging at 80%. It reduces stress and anxiety, increases motivation. And so it's not just a feel-good topic. I think it takes real courage and strength to be kind, to show somebody else that I'm here to help you in times of distress and hardships, but also leads to higher levels of empathy. And we know as a nation that's on a decline. And so how can we be compassionate for our neighbor, love thy neighbor, treat people the way we want to be treated, and have a positive intent, ask questions, and assume that everything is happening the way it's supposed to, rather than being a victim or having a negative mindset. And I think that goes back to our students too. We don't recognize the challenges, right? Some of the things that they face that are beyond our wildest dreams or imagination, that they're trying to navigate with teenage minds or younger minds and bodies that they don't rationalize. And so really trying to help educators, trying to help leaders and organizations, not just schools, but nonprofits and businesses and universities, the profound impact of kindness and treating people the way you want to be treated, to not only motivate individuals, but also retain them. As we know that teacher retention, or education retention, if you will, is a national crisis. And so it's been my way to live by the motto that if you can't find the light, be the light, but also to further echo what I shared when I was a young child, I would never treat people this way, and giving people strategies and insights as to how it's transformed my life and what they can do in their respective spaces to do the same for students, colleagues, teammates, or others with whom they serve.
There's so much to unpack there, Chris, with that answer. I love it so much. I know your dissertation was on these higher umbrella concepts, these topics of school culture, motivation, retention. And as you said, I mean, nationally, there's a crisis going on right now as people are leaving the profession at record rates, and the folks coming in are a much smaller group. And so for this piece, I know you talked about kindness, but will you just speak on, for our leaders that are listening, if they're having trouble with retention or even just motivation in general, what are some things that they can do, tactics, strategies to help their staff through this difficult time?
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I think oftentimes we go to that money is the answer, right? And I can actually share that was not a finding in my dissertation research working with inner city middle schools in the OKC metro area. What it came down to was individuals wanted relationships, trust. They wanted to be empowered, have autonomy, and they wanted recognition. What was another through line was clear and transparent communication, right? And I think oftentimes we get inundated with mandates and resources that can be overwhelming. But at the end of the day, it's people above everything else that are going to make your organization to continue to thrive and move your school forward. That's your students, that's your parents, that's your stakeholders, that's your teachers, right? And so I worked with a campus leader who, I don't know how else to say besides she was like a mix of the devil and Hitler together, which is a really tough combination. And I will, to be honest, that's where I hit lowest of the low. I had to call the employee assistance helpline, go to therapy, had to do the work myself because of the culture. And we lost 50 teachers in a year. And the response was, we have a teacher problem. No, we didn't have a teacher problem. We had a leadership problem. And I was waving the white flag from the building to central office. And I felt like there was no hope. I felt like there was no faith. There was nothing. No one was paying attention. And it took 3 years for the individual finally to be shifted out of the position, which is way too long and detrimental to students and staff. And I share that because when we think about our organization, if we have a mindset of relationship building as compliance-based measures, which is what this individual believed to be true, and we know that's not true. You have to be intentional with individuals to get to know people on a personal level, ask questions, get to know them outside of their content and your building, but let them know that you trust them and they can trust you, right? Walk that walk, be visible, be present, do what you say you're going to do, hold people accountable, have high expectations. And I know that sounds like a lot of cliche jargon, but really, that is the foundation for creating a positive school culture or a positive organizational culture where people know they matter, they're seen, they're heard, they're valued, and they're respected for who they are, and that we are all collectively one team moving this space forward. And it's our responsibility as leaders to see it that way.
Man, I love that so much. And you're right. Sometimes these terms are used so much that it goes in one ear and out the other, but truly this is what works and what people need. And instead of just having your eyes glaze over, focus on what is it that we can implement with these, I guess, buzzwords, but these words that are being used, they're being used so much for a reason. It's not because people are just trying to use it as a fad or something that's going to help one day and not the other. No, we're human beings, and these are all proven strategies that obviously are going to help your culture, your motivation, and obviously make people happy to retain them for a long period of time. That's it. Awesome. All right. I want to go back to something you had talked about with just kind of our kids, our generation, and what they're dealing with. And if you wouldn't mind defining and sharing the differences between, the different generations. I know Gen Z is one, obviously Gen Alpha is another. So feel free to go wherever you want, Chris, with this, but I would love just to kind of help our listeners understand kind of the struggles and then also with the differences between the different generations.
Absolutely. So Gen Z and Gen Alpha are the current generations that we're serving within schools. This school year, 24-25, Gen Z are about 7th grade to 12th grade, and our Gen Alpha are pre-K through 6th. The research as of right now shares the only vast difference between the two is Gen Alpha came out of the womb on a device, right? They came out holding an iPad, an iPhone, playing Fortnite, doing something of such nature. So that's a big shift. But as we think back over those who are serving in our schools now and the students that we're serving, baby boomers valued hard work, right? They valued work as the core of who they were. And over time, we've seen that shift from Gen X to being a little bit more independent, more resourceful, more curious, to millennials being really collaborative and tech savvy, right? So over a course of just 3 generations, we see a shift. And now Gen Z and Gen Alpha are super tech driven. They are digital natives, they're entrepreneurial, they're tech savvy. But because of all of this, it's led to high levels of anxiety, ADHD, mental health disorders, depression. And it's not just being depression because I'm depressed. It's about being not connected. And they see their connection through social media, right? Likes, comments, shares, being validated and looking for a sense of belonging in that regard. But the research suggests that 1 in 10 adults are chronically lonely. 1 in 5 students do not have friends. 50% of adolescents are lonely. And loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so I think we have to be mindful as we look at this generation. How do we bolster friendship and connection in our respective spaces, not just in the classroom, but as a school or in a community, no matter what it may be? But I think about that too from the work lens, as we have Gen Z who are now serving among us in work-related fields. How do we foster connection for them too in those spaces to ensure they know they matter and they belong, right? And so, again, cliche, but treat people the way you want to be treated, going back to kindness and making sure that people know they add value. And it used to be come to work, leave your personal problems at the door. But as you know, we've shifted. It's like bring your whole dang self to work and we're going to figure it out. Think about the wraparound services we provide, which it's a blessing, right? It's a blessing to be able to provide for families in that regard, but it's been a shift. And so that too has impacted the way we deal with challenging behavior, the way we deal with perceptions, the way we have mindsets around parents, and everyone's doing the best they can, which is why I continue to say we've got to operate with grace and compassion. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Give yourself grace and compassion, because there's been a shift in understanding this clientele. And I'll be vulnerable. When I showed up in the classroom in 2023 to teach college undergraduate students, I brought my tool belt from many years ago. And I will tell you, the wheels fell off the bus. Like, I was not prepared to deal with this generation. And so that's what really dove me into who are they? And they want the exact same things that my research found for teacher retention. They too want relationships. They want trust. They want to be empowered. They want autonomy. They want recognition. They want clear and transparent communication. And I say it jokingly, I've always appreciated the kings and queens of kingdoms in these classrooms for all these years, but we have to shift now. The students want to know that they are a part of this. Respect is a two-way street. In order for them to respect you, you must respect them. It should be collaborative in nature. And we've got to move away from worksheets and set and get, but get kids really involved, because they are visually and kinesthetically learners who need to engage with content at high levels. And so it's our responsibility as adults to create that experience for them, but also be the dealers of hope and belief. We have to be the ones pouring incentives in them, making sure that they know that we see them and using failure as an opportunity to grow, but not as a victim mentality or I'm not good enough, and getting rid of the shame, but navigating our emotions to foster that perseverance, that resiliency, that grit, that tenacity that we know is going to be necessary post graduation or post whatever grade they're in today.
Yeah, it's so important. Oh my goodness. Chris, I want to transition to just the many resources that you provide. And obviously, if anyone's listening, I want you to connect with Chris. I've been putting up his website, and we're going to talk about more ways for you to connect. But you also have Orange Sparrow Consulting. You've got a podcast and a blog. So let's start with the podcast. This is a brand new project for you, Keep Being You podcast. So will you just share a little bit about just what people can find when they go to this podcast?
Absolutely. So we're talking about kindness, empathy, enthusiasm, and purpose. I believe that each person in this world is here for a reason. And each person should be exactly who they are, because this world is a better place with them and because of who they are. And so on the podcast, we talk about kindness. We talk about ways in which people can have energy, be empathetic, be enthusiastic, talk about their life purpose, but talk about struggles as well that got them to where they are. And so in one of the episodes, I vulnerably talk about the story that I shared with you, working with that leader in the district, not answering the calls of crying for help. But it led me to my purpose, led me to my calling of understanding the profound impact of kindness, but also enthusiasm, and just really understanding individuals for who they are at that level. And so I'm excited for this new project. It is a work in progress, but it's been exciting to talk to individuals and to talk about you as a power to this world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right, let's switch over to your blog. And I know this is another opportunity for you to share out, voices as far as the people writing and posting on your wonderful blog, and then also for yourself to share out many strategies and things to help our educational leaders and our teachers. So we just share a little bit about, that resource and where people can find it.
Absolutely. So the blog started in July of this year. It's called The Kind Voice. I believe that if we can't find the light, be the light. I've shared that. Yep. And so this is a way for us to combat and negate any of the negative rhetoric that's out there around education. I was talking to a superintendent yesterday, and I was thanking her for her leadership and saying, hey, thanks so much for being an educational leader in today's times. And she said, I appreciate that. But more than that, it's hard to be an educator, period, right now. And I think that is a true statement. And so I've held on to that. And that's the purpose of the blog, to highlight the great things that are happening around the world in regards to education through the lens of kindness, or through the lens of empathy, or through the lens of compassion, or making sure that we understand we're all going through life, and life is lifing at higher levels than ever before. And so how do we operate with that kindness and that compassion? So it can be found on my website, orangesparrow.com/the kind voice. There are tons of articles and research and guest writers and authors, and it's been beautiful to be a part of, and it's beautiful to create. And I'm grateful for the charge, if you will, or the push from the universe to make it happen. And it's just been great to connect with individuals and to hear their stories and their resources and ways kindness has transformed their community or their own leadership or teaching journey. And so I encourage anyone to dive into the Kind Voice, to know that there are great things happening with teachers and educators nationwide and globally, and it's our responsibility to celebrate and elevate that.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, just go on social media. You're going to see so many misperceptions about just education in general from a whole host of folks. And so I try not to get too upset about that when I see it. But I do love that you're amplifying other voices and providing the opportunity for folks to truly show what's going on in schools and in classrooms. And man, there's so many great, phenomenal things that are occurring. And I just love that folks can, see that within your blog. So let's talk about the consulting, because like you said, you've built Orange Sparrow Consulting. I know you support a lot of folks. So what are some services that you provide that, our listeners can tap into?
Yeah. So of course, do full day, half day workshops, working with teachers to understand today's generation, parallel with kindness, but also giving them instructional strategies that reach today's learners for that visual kinesthetic engagement piece. Do leadership training around school culture and climate, making sure that we're creating spaces where we can recruit and retain the best. Do keynote speaking. But then in the last 6 months, I've launched what I'm calling the kindness assemblies, where I'm working with students in schools to stop bullying, to prevent measures, to let individuals know that they are exactly who they're meant to be. And we love them in our school community for that. And Joshua, I do it through my vulnerable story of being picked on and bullied as a kid, right? At home, at school, and what that looks like. Because what I found is so many students, pre-K through 12, can relate with those experiences, even though they may not be able to vocalize it. By the show of hands, they're navigating similar situations. And so it's been a real joy to travel, to work with schools and districts and nonprofits and businesses in regards to understanding today's youth, culture, climate, motivation, kindness, but in addition, making sure kids know that it's about them as well, and creating that space of those kindness assemblies. And so if those don't always match up to what the organization's looking for, we customize and meet the needs of what they may need based on resiliency or mindset, motivation, any of those things that matter, because it's foundational and critical for organizations to move forward. If people do not feel like they belong, they don't feel like they matter, they're checked out, the motivation's not there. And at the end of the day, it impacts students, organizations, or whatever it may be. And so really making sure we're fostering that belonging at the core.
Yeah, it's so important. All right, so let's talk about actionable items. Obviously, it's wonderful that the listeners are tapping into your insights and wisdom today, but for our beginning or maybe current leaders, if there's something they can do today or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you advise them to do?
Well, first and foremost, I would say actively listen, right? Make sure you're listening to those constituents that are boots on the ground. But more than that, making sure you reflect, make sure you're journaling, you're identifying situations that maybe you were emotionally charged and understanding why you got emotionally charged in that situation. Where does it stem back? How can you have grace and compassion for yourself and for other individuals, and get outside and move your body? I think that's the biggest piece in my own space of being vulnerable. When I was a campus leader, I just dug all the way into school and let my own personal health go. I look back at pictures and I'm like, holy Toledo, what happened, right? And so I just think it's important to get out for 20 minutes, but the research is really clear around getting outside. It lowers anxiety, reduces your headache, reduces stress, and it's just moving your body. And so I would say actively listen, reflect on the situations that are bothering you or that were really great. Get outside and move, but also treat people the way you'd want to be treated. If you wouldn't want it done to you, you wouldn't want it done to your wife or your spouse or your husband, whatever it may be, or your children or your grandchildren, then please don't do it to somebody else or to their own children. So It seems logical, but I think somewhere along the way, we've lost the golden rule of treat people the way you want to be treated. And so it's just my message of reiterating that really critical piece to be a leader. And I believe too, you don't need a title to lead, right? We all are leading in respective ways. And so no matter what our role is, we want to make sure we're treating people with kindness and treating people the way we want to be treated, because it's a choice. It's a choice.
Man, that self-care component is so important. I have seen it firsthand, and I've spoken on it many times on this podcast about just how I did not keep my body in the right space, my mind, it affected everything. And once I started to transition and actually take care of myself, get the sleep that I needed, eat right, or eat in general. Sometimes I wouldn't even eat, but then also like getting outside, it made a huge difference in my leadership role. And then because I felt better, then I was a better leader moving forward. So yeah, I can't say any more about that. I'll preach about that for hours. All right. So Chris, will you just share a little bit? Obviously, we talked about your website, your blog, your podcast, but if someone is listening and they want to just tap into social media, connect with you, how might they do that?
Absolutely. All social media channels, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, it's all at Dr. Chris Culver. There are Orange Sparrow websites as well, but really if you wanted to connect with me, just Dr. Culver, then those are the platforms that you could use. And all of it's linked to my website, but feel free to reach out anyway. I'm always happy to connect with individuals and learn more about their story and why they do what they do. I think it takes all of us to make this world go round. So would love to connect any way that we can.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure that everything is in the show notes. So if you're looking to, connect in any way, any form, not only will I have Chris's website for the consulting, but also, all of the social media links for you to make sure that you're following everything that Chris is doing. And with that, man, I'm just so appreciative of you. I know that you've gone through a lot of trials and tribulation, but your story is just so impactful. And I think you're making a huge difference in the lives of so many, not only in students with, your anti-bullying programs that you're doing, but then also just with new teachers in general, and then leaders. You're making a huge impact, and I'm just so grateful for you and the work that you're doing.
I really appreciate that. I echo your sentiments. Thanks for the work that you're doing, bringing awareness to that's so necessary out there. You and Charlie both with your book, but more than that, just highlighting the power of connection and belonging across the nation. So thank you for your leadership, your vision, and what you're doing. I echo all of your sentiments and grateful we're connected.